If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Sharing it with your friends and family helps spread knowledge. And when we help others grow, we grow too. Thank you so much for listening. Let's dive into the podcast. The Hijacking. A stranger boards Flight 305. The flight attendant barely glanced at the note at first. Passengers often handed over scraps of paper with phone numbers or silly jokes. Florence Schaffner tucked it into her pocket and continued down the aisle. But the man in seat 18C caught her attention. He wore a neat business suit, white shirt and black tie. His hair was perfectly combed. Nothing about him screamed danger. He looked like any other businessman flying to Seattle that Wednesday evening before Thanksgiving. "Miss, you better look at that note," he said quietly. "I have a bomb." Florence's hands trembled as she pulled the paper from her pocket. The words were simple and direct. He claimed to have explosives in his briefcase. Her training kicked in, but her heart raced. She walked back to the man's seat, trying to keep calm. The other passengers chatted and read magazines, unaware that their ordinary flight had just taken a terrible turn. "Show me," she whispered. The man opened his briefcase, just enough for her to peek inside. Florence saw wires, a battery, and what looked like red cylinders. Her mouth went dry. This was real. The stranger remained perfectly calm. He closed the briefcase and smiled. "Sit down next to me," he said gently. "We need to talk." Florence sat down, her mind spinning. The man introduced himself as Dan Cooper. He spoke in a normal tone, as if they were discussing the weather. He had demands, he explained. $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes. The plane needed to land in Seattle. Cooper knew things that surprised her. He understood how the aircraft worked. He asked about fuel levels and flight paths. This wasn't some random act. Someone had planned this very carefully. Word spread quickly through the cockpit. The captain contacted Seattle and the FBI, but Cooper seemed to know this would happen. He waited patiently, even ordering bourbon and soda from Florence. The other passengers still had no idea what was happening. They saw a businessman talking quietly with a flight attendant. Nothing more. Cooper's calm behavior puzzled everyone. Most criminals in these situations became angry or nervous. Not this man. He said please and thank you. He even offered to pay for his drink. As Flight 305 circled above Seattle, waiting for authorities to gather the money and parachutes, Cooper studied the landscape below. He pointed out landmarks and discussed wind patterns. Who was this person who knew so much about flying and geography? The tension grew thicker with each passing minute. Florence and the crew followed Cooper's instructions while trying to keep the other passengers calm. They had become part of something unprecedented. No one knew that this polite stranger would soon become the subject of the longest unsolved case in FBI history. The suspenseful standoff, ransom, parachutes, and final preparations. The tarmac at Seattle-Tacoma Airport buzzed with frantic energy. FBI agents whispered into radios, while ground crews watched from a safe distance. Inside the Boeing 727, 36 passengers sat frozen in their seats, unaware that their flight had become the center of a criminal masterstroke. Cooper remained calm as a lake at dawn. He sipped his bourbon and soda, checking his watch with the patience of a man waiting for a bus. The flight attendants exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't panic or rage. This was calculation. The authorities moved like pieces on a chessboard. Bank officials raced through Seattle streets with bags of $20 bills. The FBI demanded serial numbers be recorded for every single note. Time crawled as clerks frantically copied down thousands of numbers by hand. Meanwhile, Cooper's parachute request sent shockwaves through the aviation world. 4 parachutes, 2 main chutes, 2 reserve chutes. The FBI wondered why he needed so many. Was he planning to jump with a hostage? The questions multiplied like shadows at sunset. At the airport, Tension stretched tight as piano wire. Ground crews wheeled fuel trucks toward the plane while keeping their distance. Cooper had made his position crystal clear. Any tricks, any games, and people would die. Nobody doubted his sincerity. The money arrived first. $200,000 in a canvas bag, heavy with possibility and danger. Cooper inspected the cash with professional interest, counting stacks with steady fingers. He seemed pleased but unsurprised, as if he'd expected nothing less. Then came the parachutes. Cooper examined each one carefully. He rejected 2 reserve chutes immediately, claiming they were too old. The FBI scrambled to find replacements. Every delay stretched nerves thinner. What did this man know about parachutes that they didn't? With mechanical precision, Cooper released the passengers. Families hugged tearfully as they walked down the stairs. Children clutched their parents' hands. Business travelers loosened their ties and breathed deeply. Freedom tasted like cold November air. But Cooper kept the crew. Captain Scott, First Officer Raditsak, Flight Engineer Anderson, and Flight Attendant Tina Mucklow. 4 lives hanging in the balance. Their faces showed the weight of uncertainty. But Cooper treated them with odd courtesy. He even offered to pay for their drinks. The refueling began. Jet fuel flowed into the tanks while Cooper outlined his flight plan. South toward Mexico City at low altitude and reduced speed. The crew exchanged worried looks. This route would drain their fuel reserves dangerously low. As darkness gathered around the airport, one question burned in everyone's mind. Where was this mysterious hijacker really planning to go? The answer waited somewhere in the black November sky, wrapped in clouds and secrets that only Cooper knew. The leap into darkness, disappearance above the wilderness. The Boeing 727 climbed back into the stormy night sky. Cooper sat calmly in his seat, still wearing his business suit and black tie. The flight crew followed his exact orders. Fly south. Keep the speed under 200 miles per hour. Stay below 10,000 feet. Lower the landing gear and flaps. Rain hammered the windows. Wind rocked the plane. The crew wondered what would happen next. Cooper asked for the flight manifest. He studied it carefully. Then he stood up and walked to the back of the plane. The flight attendant watched him tie the money bag to his waist. He put on the parachute with steady hands. At 8 p.m., somewhere over the dense forests of southwest Washington, Cooper made his move. He lowered the aft stairs of the Boeing 727. Cold air and rain rushed into the cabin. The plane shook violently. The crew felt the aircraft bump slightly. Then Cooper was gone, just like that. No goodbye, no final words. He had jumped into a raging storm with freezing rain and 200-mile-per-hour winds. The darkness swallowed him completely. The pilots radioed air traffic control immediately. They had lost their hijacker. But where exactly had he jumped? The storm made it impossible to pinpoint the location. The plane had been flying over thick wilderness for miles. Air Force jets scrambled to follow the Boeing 727. Their pilots searched the sky with powerful lights. They saw nothing. No parachute. No sign of Cooper. The storm had erased him from sight. On the ground, search teams gathered quickly, but they faced a massive problem. Cooper could have jumped anywhere across a 20-mile stretch of forest. The terrain was brutal. Deep valleys, rocky cliffs, rivers running fast with winter rain. Teams spread out across the wilderness. They searched for days. Helicopters flew low over the trees. Dogs sniffed through the underbrush. Volunteers combed every trail. Nothing. No parachute caught in branches. No body. No money. Not even a footprint. The FBI launched one of the longest investigations in their history. They interviewed hundreds of suspects. They studied every detail of the case. But Cooper had vanished as if he never existed. Some experts said he couldn't have survived. The storm was too fierce, the temperature too cold. He wore only a business suit. The terrain below was unforgiving. Others wondered if Cooper had planned everything perfectly. Maybe he knew the area. Maybe he had help waiting on the ground. The mystery deepened with every passing day. A man had jumped from a plane with $200,000 and disappeared forever. Was he dead in the forest? Or had he pulled off the perfect crime? The questions haunted everyone who knew the story. Cooper had become a ghost. The investigation begins. Clues, suspects, and dead ends. The next morning, FBI headquarters buzzed like a disturbed hive. Agents rushed through hallways carrying boxes of evidence. Phones rang without pause. The man who called himself Dan Cooper had vanished into the stormy darkness. But he left behind a trail of clues that would consume investigators for decades. Norjack became the case name. Northwest Orient Hijacking. Within hours, it grew into one of the largest investigations the FBI had ever launched. Teams spread across 3 states, searching forests, rivers, and mountains for any trace of the mysterious Skyjacker. The evidence seemed promising at first. Cooper's black tie remained on the plane, still warm from his neck. His fingerprints covered the magazine he had flipped through during the flight. The flight attendants remembered every detail of his face, his voice, his calm manner. Surely this would be enough to find him. Sketch artists worked with Florence Schaffner and the other crew members. Slowly, a face emerged on paper. Middle-aged man with dark hair, kind eyes behind black-rimmed glasses. A forgettable face that could belong to anyone's neighbor or coworker. The drawings appeared in newspapers across America within days. Then, the tips began flooding in. Hundreds of calls every day. Suspicious husbands, quiet neighbors, men who had recently come into money, veterans who knew about parachutes, airline workers with inside knowledge. The FBI followed every lead, no matter how strange. Agents knocked on doors from Seattle to Miami. They questioned skydivers and military men. They tracked down anyone who had bought a similar tie or briefcase. Each lead seemed important until it crumbled under investigation. The man with perfect knowledge of Boeing aircraft turned out to be afraid of heights. The paratrooper who bragged about pulling off the perfect crime had been in jail that night. Cooper's expertise puzzled everyone. He knew exactly where to sit for the best jump. He asked for specific parachutes by name. He understood the plane's capabilities and limitations. This wasn't luck. Someone had planned this carefully. The $20 bills presented another mystery. Each serial number had been carefully recorded by the bank. Finding even one of these bills would lead straight to Cooper. The FBI sent the numbers to banks, stores, and businesses nationwide. Rewards were offered. People checked their wallets obsessively, but the money never appeared. Not a single bill surfaced in circulation. It was as if Cooper and his fortune had simply dissolved into the November storm. The silence grew more puzzling with each passing month. Where was the money? Where was Cooper? America became fascinated. Television shows featured the case. Newspapers ran weekly updates. Amateur detectives formed clubs to discuss theories. Cooper transformed from criminal to folk hero, the polite gentleman who outsmarted the system and disappeared like smoke. Unsettling discoveries, ransom money on the Riverbank. The morning started like any other for 8-year-old Brian Ingram. February 10th, 1980. He was playing along the Columbia River with his family, digging in the sandy shore near Vancouver, Washington. His small hands scraped through wet earth and debris when something strange caught his eye. Bundles of rotting paper. Money. Lots of it. Brian called out to his father, who hurried over to examine the discovery. The bills were badly damaged by years of rain and river water. Some crumbled at the touch, but the serial numbers were still visible on many of the $20 bills. Within hours, FBI agents arrived at the scene. They carefully collected every fragment they could find. Back at the laboratory, technicians ran the serial numbers through their database. The match sent shockwaves through the investigation team. These were DB, Cooper's bills, no question about it. Nearly 9 years had passed since Cooper jumped into that stormy night. The case had grown cold. Leads had dried up. Most agents assumed they would never see those bills again. Yet here they were, buried in mud along a river hundreds of miles from the jump zone. The discovery raised more questions than it answered. How did the money get there? Cooper had jumped near the Lewis River area, but the Columbia River flows in a different direction. The bills would have needed to travel an impossible path through forests and mountains to reach Brian's digging spot. Forensic experts examined every bill under microscopes. They searched for fingerprints, DNA, or any trace evidence that might lead them to Cooper. The results were disappointing. The money was too damaged. Weather and time had erased any useful clues. Some investigators wondered if Cooper had survived the jump and buried the money himself. Maybe he planned to return for it later, but never got the chance. Others believed the bills proved Cooper died that night. Perhaps his body and the money bag had washed into various waterways during spring floods. The strangest part was the condition of the bills. They showed signs of being buried, not scattered by wind or water. Someone or something had placed them in that exact spot. But who and why? Amateur detectives seized on the discovery. New theories flooded newspapers and television shows. Some claimed Cooper was still alive and watching the investigation from afar. Others insisted the money placement was too convenient, too perfect. Was someone playing games with the FBI? The Columbia River find became both a breakthrough and a dead end. It proved Cooper's money had survived, but offered no answers about Cooper himself. The mystery had grown deeper, not clearer. Investigators returned to their maps and witness statements, searching for connections they might have missed. The case was alive again, buzzing with fresh possibilities and darker questions than ever before. Enduring shadows, theories, conspiracies, and the official closure. The years rolled by, and D.B. Cooper refused to fade away. What started as a simple crime became something much stranger. People could not let go of the man who jumped into that stormy night. The FBI files grew thicker each year. Tips poured in from across the country. Someone spotted Cooper at a gas station in Oregon. Another caller swore they saw him boarding a bus in Texas. Each lead led nowhere, but the calls never stopped coming. Amateur detectives took up the case with fierce passion. They studied every photograph, analyzed every witness statement, and built elaborate theories. Some believed Cooper was a secret government agent. Others whispered about connections to organized crime. A few even suggested he worked for the CIA, and the whole thing was a cover-up. DNA testing arrived in the 1990s, bringing new hope. Scientists carefully examined tiny fabric fibers and saliva traces from Cooper's bourbon glass. The results showed tantalizing clues, but no perfect match. Each test raised more questions than answers. Computer experts tried to crack codes they claimed Cooper left behind. They found hidden messages in his choice of words and secret meanings in his actions. The theories grew wilder with each passing decade. Cooper became a ghost that haunted the imagination. Television shows featured dramatic recreations. Books filled library shelves. Documentaries promised to solve the mystery once and for all. Yet Cooper's true identity slipped away like smoke every time someone thought they had found him. Financial experts tracked the serial numbers of the stolen bills. They watched for decades, waiting for even one bill to surface in circulation. Banks across America kept special lookout lists. The money seemed to have vanished as completely as the man himself. Then came 2016. The FBI made a quiet announcement that shocked Cooper hunters everywhere. After 45 years of active investigation, they were closing the case. No more resources would be spent chasing the phantom Skyjacker. The official closure only made things worse. Cooper enthusiasts felt betrayed. They formed online groups and held annual conventions. The mystery had created its own community of believers who refused to give up. Today, Cooper lives on in ways he never could have imagined. He became a folk hero, a symbol of someone who beat the system and disappeared without a trace. His story proves that some puzzles resist every attempt to solve them. The man in the black tie and business suit continues to haunt our collective memory, a reminder that perfect crimes might actually exist.